Hi everyone, my name is Joseph. Thank you for joining the show. Welcome everybody on TikTok, everybody on Facebook, everybody on live. Today's main story, we're going to cover two different things, right? The news segment, which I'm going to start talking about first, is regarding ICE, immigration enforcement. And there is a new ICE in this new era. There's a stark contrast between what we're seeing, what they're doing now, compared to what they have been doing in the past 12 years. Not just a different administration, but it's a completely new era. And so we'll be sharing some of the things that we're seeing. The second part of this live segment is our success story filming, and we're going to be talking about the legal pathway to get a green card, where arguably the most successful, the smoothest, the most straightforward way to get a green card through the EB-2 process, employment process. And I'm going to share that success story. But you will see just exactly how tedious and how long and how burdensome and bureaucratic that process is. And this is already arguably the fastest. So these are the two things that we want to go through, right? The first segment, the new segment, we can probably spend 10, 15 minutes on it. And then we'll open it up to any questions or comments about anything you want to ask about regarding immigration, right? And I'll do my best to try to answer those questions for you. So feel free to ask those questions. Galen here will record it down, and then he'll ask me. And then right after that, I'll jump into the success story, which will probably take another maybe 20 minutes or so. And then I'll answer questions in the end as well for anybody who has any immigration-related questions. This video, the whole live segment, will be released online for viewing afterwards. And then we'll also cut up the success stories for you guys to see. Okay, so the news that we want to cover today is the new era of ICE. Because what we're seeing is that there's a pretty big difference between the new and the old. Let's talk a little bit about the old ICE. ICE, first of all, is the enforcement arm of the immigration department in the United States, right? So there's the customs officer that determines who can come into the country. They admit them. They prepare the paperwork for asylum. They allow people to enter, not just people, but also cargo, etc. Right? So that's custom enforcement. There's the consular officers that issues visas so that people can try to come to the U.S. But it doesn't mean guarantee that they'll enter, right? Somebody could get a visa, and then when they come in, customs might stop them and intercept them because they might be a national security threat, right? So that's the consulate, that's the customs, and then USCIS, United States Immigration Services, are the ones who grants immigration benefits to individuals, right? Whether it's green cards or citizenship, but that's the administrative arm there, and they do a lot of interviews and they do a lot of inspections. And a lot of times things have to go through USCIS first before it could go to the consulate, before they could go to the customs. But that's the normal pathway. But if somebody overstays their visa, if somebody who is across the border illegally, and you need to kick them out, the consulate is not going to kick them out. Customs are not going to kick them out. USCIS is not going to go and arrest them and kick them out. That burden falls under ICE. Okay, and then when they do make arrests and put them in detention centers, they give it ultimately to an immigration judge to adjudicate whether or not they have equitable claims to stay in the country, or do they ultimately have to go, right? So ICE, very much like police officers, they're responsible to get the people who are not supposed to be here out. Whatever your opinion about that, they're just like a police force, right? They're needed in any immigration, any country with an immigration department needs somebody like ICE, or else the country will get flooded with people that are not supposed to be here, right? Especially if you know about the visa process. Once you get a visa, you come in, you report where you are, and then you kind of just disappear off the grid. And that if there's 40,000 people entering every single airport every month, and then across all of the U.S. and every port of entry, how are you going to keep up with all the people who are here, who are not here? So you do need an enforcement arm. With that being said, the predominant mentality of ICE, of the public, of the private bar association and the nonprofit bar association, the predominant understanding, the unwritten contract was this, that they understood it is largely a lose-lose-lose situation, in the sense that for them to go find an individual to deport them costs the taxpayer a lot of money. Insurmountable amount of money, billions of dollars, for ICE officers to go and find people and to kick them out. Costs a lot of taxpayer money. Second, by getting individuals out of the country, they are no longer here contributing to the economic activity of the United States, meaning they're not buying food, they're not having shelter, they're not contributing to the economic prosperity of the United States, right? Almost 2/3 of our GDP is dependent on consumption. And that is highly important to the growth of the United States. And so by kicking a lot of people out, it dampers that growth. And the third loss is that a lot of people who are here are working, and when you pull people out, it harms the industries that are gravely needed. Whatever your opinion on that is, right? So let's just talk about the industries that heavily depend on a lot of people who are here unlawfully. Construction, all the highways, all the different things that needs to be built overnight in night hours, hospitality, and restaurant and farm work, right? All the apples, all the oranges, all the strawberries, a lot of those industries heavily depend on these people. So if ICE does go out and deport every single person who is unlawful and undocumented here, costs billions of dollars in salary and in government office to do, put them on planes, fly them out, right? Expensive. Second, the economic activity dampens. And then the third is these industries will collapse, and therefore United States, a lot of the core segments, the housing prices, everything will skyrocket if every single thing that needs to be built needs to be done by W-2 employee, right? And it is the reality that the United States lived through in the past, I would say at least 20 years. Now, whatever your opinion on that is, that has been the underlying understanding, and therefore, ICE has a priority list of who they need to go after. Who should they go after? A lot of times, the high priority are those with criminal records. I know there have been lots of families in the past 20 years that says, no, my family was deported, and it wasn't because, but in the large scale, generally speaking, in the past 20 years, even under the Obama administration, there was the highest deportation, but a lot of them, again, were with criminal backgrounds, DUI included, right? And those are things that most of the public can gather around, saying, okay, if somebody has these criminal records and they're unlawfully here, that's just too many strikes. We can't allow that. That's been somewhat of the old understanding, and we are seeing a shift in mentality, a new age in the ICE department. How is it different? The idea that if they are here contributing to the economic prosperity of the United States may no longer be believed, meaning they're here, they're clogging up the parking spots, they're clogging up the restaurants, they're increasing the housing, they are taking up too much space and air, and they should not be here. It costs us. It costs the average American. It reduces our prosperity with them being here. That's a new mentality. A second one is that there are so many companies that use all these unlawful workers, illegal workers, and it makes lawful companies not be able to compete. And so by getting rid of them, it will open up the jobs, it will open up the businesses. And so states that predominantly use undocumented workers have reached high prosperities, and that's unfair to all the red states. So there's the second mentality of they do not contribute to the United States, and these other industries can be replaced by AI, by robots, by other Americans. And third might be It cost billions to get people out. Yes, it is a necessary pain in the past, but now it might be what actually funds the ICE department, right? So if you took a look at what funds ICE, predominantly it's congressional budget. So it costs billions of dollars. The fines, the bail bonds, the I-9 audits to businesses, the support to other administrations, agencies, all of that makes up a small percentage. 1% maybe from like I-9 audits, maybe like 5%, 10% if everything else, but predominantly 90%, the billions of dollars that's needed to make ICE functional comes from congressional budget. Now, ICE is being expanded. There is absolutely no doubt and no question that of all the agencies, the consulate, USCIS, CBP, and ICE, all three other agencies are shrinking. Staff cuts, buyouts, freezing of hiring, narrowing the scope of work and authority to make discretionary decisions, narrowing that down from the other agencies and transferring that power to ICE, therefore making ICE's role in the immigration world much more important, therefore needing to staff up ICE officials. ICE is in no doubt the fastest growing agency of all the immigration agencies. And when that happens, budgets and cost becomes more. And when that happens, if push comes to shove and you need to fund the agency, there will be a lot more I-9 audits, fining companies. Some companies get fined like hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars for unlawfully hiring different people. Bail bonds will increase. And so a lot of these revenue for ICE will increase. Now, again, remember the traditional underlying assumption from ICE that we've seen in the past 20 years at least was it's a lose-lose-lose situation. It's really expensive for the government to send people out there to deport people, so they're not going to do that unless they're major criminals. It will harm the consumption and consumerism, and it will harm the critical infrastructure businesses that needs to make this great country thrive. Now, first two already addressed. The last one, if ICE has already expanded, if they have already all these personnel, and they have now a quota of how many people they need to deport, it is no longer trying to go find the biggest criminals to deport. Now it's to hit a quota. And when there's a confluence of all these factors, right? We're talking about societal from top down, right? There's a pressure to get rid of people who are undocumented, people who are who have illegally stayed. And there's a mentality shift of new officers who just fundamentally believe that their lifestyle has been harmed by all these illegal immigrants, and that it will serve the United States good by deporting them. It's a different mentality. It's a new era, for better or for worse, right? I'm not stating an opinion right now. I'm just talking about the change, because these news segments, I'm trying to report things on the ground. I'm trying to report things as they are happening before, I mean, because these things aren't really picked up online. I mean, there's small things. Like, for example, right, I have here the ICE risk classification assessment process was not consistently used to prevent the release of high-risk individuals. This was released by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General report back in June 2024. That was before this administration, and I could tell you now it is far worse, right? Before, what ICE is supposed to do, again, they're the enforcement arm, right? So if they catch somebody, they're supposed to use this tool to assess if they're a high risk or not. So it falls under two camps. Do they have mandatory detention? So if they do have mandatory detention, don't need to use this assessment, put them in detention and wait for trial, right? That's clear enough. But if they are not required to go under mandatory detention, then they're supposed to use this process. And let me just kind of walk you through that process. They're supposed to complete an RCA to assess the individual's risk factor whether or not they are a public safety or flight. Because normally judges will do that at the bond hearing, but if they have no mandatory detention, maybe ICE should just do that, right? It makes sense. And then afterwards, once the RCA will assign a high, medium, or low risk, so the system will assign the risk, and then based on those factors, the tool will recommend detention or release. And then whether or not it suggests release, they could be released on their own or under community supervision, or they can apply for a bond. And then they go through that process.
Can you define RCA for us?
Oh, RCA is the risk classification assessment process. It is the tool. It is, think of it like it's like Google of whether or not somebody is safe. So they put their information, they put their factors, right? Age, criminal history, etc., and then they assess it. Should this person be released? Just so you know, even if the system recommends bond, the fastest somebody usually gets out, still 12 to 15 days, maybe even 20 days. And that's assuming the moment somebody is detained, their family and their friends immediately finds a good lawyer, immediately applies for bond, and within 15 to 20 days, then get them out. They are detained for 15 to 20 days in the detention center. And that's assuming the system grants that option. There's so many misdemeanor crimes that have a guilty punishment verdict of being in jail for less than 15 days. Versus this situation, you are automatically in jail, in detention center for 15, 20 days. And that's the fastest. And some people are there for months, by the way, before they can even have a chance to come out. And if you're saying, oh, if they're criminals, they're illegally here, that's what they signed up for. Under the old framework of thinking about ICE, they target criminals and they go after them. They spend the taxpayer money. Maybe I could grant that argument. But under the new administration, let me tell you a little bit of what we're seeing that is different than before, okay? Students, international students, young 20-year-olds, some of them are from Ivy League institutions, for failing to extend their status online, reinstatement, visa gets canceled. They have a traffic violation from 5-7 years ago, get canceled, they get in proceedings. Now their visa is terminated. They go with friends on a cruise, they're coming back, and they get arrested and put in detention center. These are the things that we have been seeing. International students who have good grades, good schools for small violations. That's one. Second, green card holders who have a notice of intent to appear at NTA for whatever reason, maybe because they've been out for too long, or maybe because there's a investment reassessment on their case, and so now they're going through the USCIS system, but according to the customs officer, their conditional green card has been terminated, and so they cannot let them in. They get referred over to ICE, and ICE detains them. So now, and then the third category of what people are seeing, business owners under I-9 audits. Business owners, but maybe they have too many violations with I-9, and so ICE detains the business owners. This is unprecedented. ICE, again, under the original framework, they're going after criminals, they're spending taxpayer money, but under this new zero tolerance policy, CBP officers' authority has been largely transferred over to ICE for them to make the decision. Based on these reports and the limited amount of staff that ICE has, they can't process everyone. And so a lot of people, because of lack of manpower, they just automatically put into detention. There is no assessment. And then they leave it up to the immigration judge to go through that process. The system was built for deporting criminals. Now they're deporting green card holders. Maybe one day, US citizens. Who knows, right? Habeas corpus is being suspended, right? Or might be one day. So that is the reality that we're facing. And maybe That is exactly what America wants. Okay. I'm not putting any judgment right now, other than my facial expression, maybe. But I'm just seeing the transformation of our country. And personally, if you're asking me about my opinion, if you want to make immigration better, it really shouldn't be stripping away authority from consulate officers, from USCIS, from CBP, and then just increasing ICE. Every agency has a lot of responsibility and needs, and that's why we have one of the greatest immigration systems in the world. And I understand maybe the priorities have shifted, but each agency could do so much good. And so I want to say, like, for example, ICE just was not accustomed to making all these assessments. They were used to going after the criminals. Now you suddenly have them adjudicate all these student records and revoking their statuses. Traditionally, that was on the consulate, right? That was on USCIS's plate. Maybe let them do a little bit of that, right? Maybe increase the funding for these other government agencies so that they could do more, right? So I'm just saying the way to go about pursuing the change that you want to pursue, I don't think shutting down all the other departments and just making one department suddenly really important is the way to do it in a government capacity, because it takes time to train up people. So that's just what I want to share on the ground, right? I mean, most people don't know, but as immigration lawyers, we deal with the I-9 side on the business front, right? A lot of businesses get audited for I-9s. And if you don't know what I-9 is, it's just basically ICE coming in and double checking, hey, how many employees do you have? Are they legal? Can I see their paperwork? And then, did you update it? Oh, you didn't update it. Okay, well, this person had a green card. Now it was expired and you didn't update it, so you get fined $500, right? So it's a way to make sure businesses are not hiring illegal immigrants. And the Department of Labor is making sure people who are getting green cards through the employment process are paying the fair wages and giving the first option to Americans first if they want to take on this job. And if Americans are not applying for the job, then fine, you can give it to an immigrant, right? So there's so many forces to make sure that businesses are hiring American workers. But as immigration lawyers, we're dealing with ICE on the business front. We're obviously dealing with ICE on the registration front if they're like unlawfully here. And so, but I recognize it is an important part of the immigration system. Okay, it has to be. Right? If we have nation states and we have borders, and we have global migration, and if people are going to come in, if they're bad actors who are going to take advantage of the system and come in, we do want a good system that will be in charge of getting them out. And so I do believe in ICE, and the prior director, I think some of our staff here worked for them before and have a good relationship, and it's fair, it's understandable. But we are in a new era. For better or for worse, I'm not going to pine on that, but I'm just saying the way to go about doing things, I recommend a different path. All right, that's my spiel on the news segment. I'll take questions, and then we'll get into the success story, which relates to this in a way because we're talking about legal immigration.
Any expected time of EB3 skilled PD filed in January 2024 ROW?
I would say just wait a year to a year and a half. It is crazy long, but there's so many things that might relate to that. Maybe you'll get an audit. Maybe you have to refile and restart the whole clock. So it is a nightmare. I totally understand.
Sister won diversity visa lottery.
Okay.
She was on F1 and was out of status. She left the country last year.
So I guess it depends on how long you've been out of status and whether or not you need to apply for a waiver, right? So if you want a diversity visa, great, you're able to get a green card. But if you have violated any immigration laws over 180 days, over a year, you might have a bar. And so that is the unfortunate situation.
So is 601A the right thing?
Right, but if their only way to get a green card is through the diversity, they probably don't have relatives here to be able to waive it. But if you do, look into the 601, potentially waive the unlawful presence.
This question is about U visas, which we do not do. Is that correct?
Right, we don't really do U visas.
I'm having my citizenship interview. I lost my job 3 months ago. Will this cause problems?
citizenship looks more at good moral character and all these other requirements. However, under the new administration, there has been a push regarding public charge, meaning if you have a chance to become a burden on society, the government does not want to give you additional immigration benefits, i.e., from green card to becoming a citizen, because then you'll start sucking the pool out of the American system. With that being said, I was extremely worried about that. And a few weeks ago, I went to talk to some USCIS officers adjudicating these said naturalization interviews. And from what I have been told and from what we have seen, the whole public charge issue has not dramatically changed as we feared. Right? Under the first Trump administration, that was a hot topic. It was litigated. It got canceled. Everybody's anticipating it will totally come back. But as of now, it hasn't changed since the previous, this is the Biden administration. And under Biden administration, if you had just lost your job, if you have a fairly good resume, there's a good chance you could get another job. The public charge is not likely to be an issue to cause your citizenship to be denied. So if you're just asking me in general, you know, probably a low percentage of that negatively affecting the citizenship application.
My daughter lost her 10-year green card. I assume lost isn't physically lost. I'm applying for the replacement. Can we still travel internationally?
So I'm assuming you're filing the I-90, you are renewing your green card, and you don't have it yet and you want to leave. Because if you file the I-90 and you get the 10-year green card and then you leave, you come back with a 10-year green card, not a problem. So if you file the I-90 and assuming your biometrics is waived, you don't have to go get fingerprinted, and then you leave the country, the green card will just get mailed to your house, and hopefully you have relatives that can mail it back to you wherever you go, and then you can take it to come back in. So the timing of it all is extremely tricky. I highly recommend doing the I-90 online so you can get a receipt and a biometrics notice ASAP. And if you do and you see your biometrics is waived, then you at least have the peace of mind that, okay, if I do leave, then the green card will get mailed, then you can mail. But if it gets lost in mail, again, that will suck. If that happens, contact us. We'll find another solution, right? But to answer your question specifically, if you time it correctly, you could leave. And also, even if the green card gets lost, even if the biometrics is not waived and you already left the country, as long as you're able to show up before a CBP officer at the Canada border or at the Mexico border and you present yourself and say, I am a green card holder, I don't have the physical one with me, it got lost, it got robbed, you know, I tried to get it, but I couldn't, but I did not abandon my residency. Please allow me in. Maybe they'll issue you an I-193 waiver. We pay about $700, and then they give you a one-time entry. So look into all of those. If you have any more questions, you know, feel free to schedule a consultation. We'd love to help you.
Okay, this is kind of a hot button political issue.
Okay,
So,
okay.
But how do you feel about the South African refugees that were brought here? Can I apply for I-212 inside the USA?
A lot of the 212s that we've seen have been filed in the U.S., but it depends on your personal circumstance, right? So some people overstay their visa or illegally here, and they need to apply for 212. So some people do apply for the 212 while here, but most people, obviously, they get denied at the consulate, and therefore they need to apply 212, so they're abroad, right? So I guess the way to answer that is most people apply abroad because that's where they find themselves needing it. But some people who are here file 212, 601 sort of simultaneously here, or even during immigration proceedings.
Is it safe to apply for citizenship if you have a record and set aside prior to getting green card?
Set aside, I'm assuming the conviction has been dropped, it's been dismissed, it's been expunged. To immigration, none of that ultimately excuses, or I should say, none of those activities by the court, expungement, dismissal, dropped, prevents them from looking into your case more. And they could cancel your citizenship, they could deny your citizenship, and they can even refer you to immigration court to be deported based on hearsay evidence. So they don't need an ultimate conviction to do that. So if your arrest or crime or charge or case is severe enough that might shock the conscience of the officer, you are at risk.
And can you just quickly sum up your answer for the losing 10-year green card, applying for the replacement, can I still travel while it's pending? Just quickly sum up.
A green card holder still has the right to enter the country even if their green card is expired and they do not have it physically on hand. That is a fundamental principle. But the airlines might not let you board their plane because they don't want to take that risk. So you might have to see an officer. And the officer will inspect you seeking admission to come in. So if they look through your history and you have a clean history, you have a good history, they could give you the I-193 waiver to let you in. So that is the worst case scenario that you are facing. Best case scenario, obviously, you leave, green card gets mailed over, somebody mails it to you, you get on the plane and you fly back.
What are your thoughts on birthright citizenship? Will it go away?
If it goes away, it will definitely be after Congress changes the Constitution.
Right.
Right. So, do I think it will be changed accordingly? I mean, the last I looked, right, only lawful permanent residents and U.S. citizen, and when they have a kid, do they get U.S. citizenship. Nobody else does. What I think is most likely to happen, and this one is purely my opinion, although I know a lot of immigration lawyers that agree with me, is that this whole issue of people who just get U.S. citizenship by being born here seems to violate the conscience of the public, or to at least certain people of the public, that they say it's seemingly they get such a big privilege that they don't deserve, right? I mean, that's a whole underlying emotion. So the whole debate is, should we cancel their birthright citizenship? Just they don't get it anymore. Obviously, that has to change the Constitution in order to make that happen, and that's such a big battle. But what they could easily do, is by changing the way people get benefits. For example, if you're a U.S. citizen and you want to petition your family member and for them to get green cards, potentially they could change that benefit structure without having to go through Congress necessarily, and by saying, well, you need to be a U.S. citizen and you need to have lived here for 10 years, 15 years. A normal, real U.S. citizen would have done so. But people who come to the United States, give birth, take the kids away, and they grow up in a foreign country, they're like the opposite of DACA, right? DACA dreamers, they're illegally brought here and they grow up in America, and they're every bit American, but for the fact that they entered without inspection when they were kids. These birthright citizen kids that left and grew up in a foreign country, maybe Congress can easily change the benefit structure of U.S. citizens. You want Social Security, you want Medicaid, you want rights and privileges of U.S. citizens like everybody else. Here's some physical presence tests that you must abide by and comply with in order to get it. And that not only nullifies future benefits of people trying to seek to give birth in the U.S., but it also nullifies all the past 20 years of people who tried to take advantage of it, right? So that's my personal prediction that will appease both sides. But we'll see. We'll see if that happens.
Okay, so here is the situation. I married a U.S. citizen who sponsored me while I had F1 status, but the status was terminated. F1 status was terminated. And now my I-130 is being withdrawn by my partner. What will happen to me? I don't have any other status.
Sorry. Can you repeat the question one more time? There are a lot of facts.
So, married a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
While they were on F1 status.
Okay.
F1 status is gone now.
Okay.
I-130 is now being withdrawn.
Okay.
What will happen? I don't have any other status right now. So right now they're relying on the I-130, and the I-130 is getting withdrawn.
So technically, not only are you relying on the I-130, you're actually relying more on the I-45 because that should have been done at the same time. And if I-130 is being withdrawn, 45 is being withdrawn, you're without status in the U.S., right? And you cannot change to a different status as far as you can't change to most of the status. You can't become a student again. You cannot change to H-1B. You cannot change to O-1 and L-1. The only thing you can do is maybe do like a U visa and other things, or you typically leave, get a visa, and come back in, or you get married to another U.S. citizen. That is generally the analysis.
On the naturalization application, has a question: have you ever committed a crime and not got caught?
Yes.
How should I answer?
I shouldn't have said yes. Okay. The question is, on the naturalization application, the question, have you ever been committed a crime and not been caught? Yes or no? The answer should be the truth. And if it's complicated, then you could do no addendum or yes addendum. Again, these officers, a lot of them are good people, in my experience, and they want to approve cases. There are certain crimes that they have to inspect and deny. So generally speaking, right, have you ever been committed a crime in which you were not arrested, have not been convicted? Yes, no. You could always attach addendum and explain. But obviously it's extremely sensitive, and depending on how you answer, it could get your case denied and your green card revoked and your whole family gone. So you really want to sensitively work on that case with a good lawyer. Doesn't have to be us, but that's something that I would recommend.
But yeah, worse is lying on that.
If you lie, then it's even worse, right? Fraud, misrepresentation, and your green card can also get. So one option potentially is, I really don't know what to do, and so you withdraw the application if you already filed it. But if you haven't filed it, then you really think about whether or not you want to file it.
Our question: military parole in place? Question mark.
To the best of my knowledge, it is still in effect. I think a lot of people are still doing it. We just had a case approved. But again, Gabby at our firm does all the military in place cases.
But is still available as of our last client getting approved.
Right.
Okay, so I flew a drone in a national park, and I got a misdemeanor and a fine. Does that affect an I-400?
So for your citizenship,
Yeah,
I
misdemeanor
don't
fine.
think so. Again, if you're flying over a military base and you're suspected for espionage, that's a different story, right? But if you flew it too high to a building and you got a traffic fine, it sounds more like a traffic fine to me.
Misdemeanor fine.
Yeah.
Right. What happens if my I-751 gets denied while I'm abroad?
You can refile the 751. Isn't that beautiful? Yep.
Work on it more, probably, right?
Right, right. So we've done many cases like that. Technically, you shouldn't have been abroad, but if you are, to the CBP officer, you've lost that right and privilege to come back in. So if you file it again and it's being adjudicated and you get a new case number, then you can convince the officer that you are a permanent resident and deserve to come back.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
My sponsor made under 3,000, which is under the minimum requirement. Can he show proof of income, house equity?
So you could always use assets. It's not preferred. It makes things a lot more complicated. Generally, it's much easier to get a joint sponsor and have the joint sponsor prove it. But assuming you absolutely can't get another joint sponsor, you have to use the sponsor to then try to use then you have to use their assets, liquid assets. But the forms I-34, the forms A-64, they really spell out all the calculation and math on how to do it. So I would recommend going through that.
Is it safe to apply for citizenship with shoplifting charges?
That's a case by case.
Case by case.
Yeah, because grand theft is pretty bad.
Right. Yeah, can you explain? Look, you don't want crime of moral turpitude, is that right?
Right. So it depends on the sentencing, the crime, and it depends on everything else. How long ago was? What are you doing now? So yeah.
What does it mean when your I-485 is transferred to a different office?
I wouldn't think too much about it. USCIS, they're understaffed everywhere, so it could just mean they're understaffed at this particular office, so they're transferring somewhere else to adjudicate.
Are there legal ways an immigrant without a work permit can generate an income inside the U.S.?
Are there legal ways in which an immigrant?
That's what they said.
Okay.
Potentially just person in the U.S.
Okay. Can generate income without a work permit. So immigration law forbids you from working illegally. So now the question becomes, can somebody generate income without work? And then how do you define work? And who is inspecting you? So if we're talking anything like Uber Eats, being a fashion model, doing things that other people normally get paid for, that would be all work. And if you're using the technical term income is really much defined as work and compensation for your services. So probably that's a tautology, meaning no. But if you mean, can somebody get money? People can donate to you, right? If you have a GoFundMe page, right? You saved, there was a big fire, you rushed in, you saved a family because of your love and you care and you're heroic, but you burned your arm, and then there's a GoFundMe page and you got $1 million. That's not work because you're not acting as a firefighter, even though right? So that's how you want to think about that.
And we only have 15 minutes left.
Oh, yeah.
In our live,
Okay.
But we still have a lot of questions.
Jeez. Okay. We have to do the success story. Right after success story, we'll try to answer some of the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And again, thank you guys for asking so many questions. We do this every Thursday. At least I'll try to. We started this year, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Today's success story is about legal immigration. Okay? Somebody who graduated from an Ivy League and got an H-1B visa, and the company sponsored them and then getting a green card. I want to walk you through that journey because a lot of people think, let's get rid of the illegal immigrants. Why don't everybody do the legal immigration? Let me kind of walk you through what legal immigration looks like and just how insanely difficult it is. And this is actually already the perfect story. The client graduated at a career fair. The company and us, we went together to recruit said individual during the interview. This individual, pretty stellar, had a lot of companies to choose from, big companies, and this company was a relatively small tech company. The salary wasn't as high. But because the company was willing to work on the immigration application for this individual and be very cooperative, that was the signing bonus for this individual. So the individual said, okay, you know what, maybe bigger companies have a bigger career path, but I'm willing to sign on with this smaller tech company. So as the tech company's corporate counsel, we prepared everything and we filed the H-1B and it got approved, right? It was an engineering position. Right after the H-1B got approved and they immediately started working. Within 1 month, we immediately started, this is back in 2022, by the way. 2022, boom, they graduated a master's degree from an Ivy League. We filed the H-1B. They got the H-1B application approved, and we immediately filed the wage determination and perm process within 2 months. And by the end of the year, we actually got all the perm and all the advertisement, everything approved, and we filed for the I-140 within 1 year, 2020. Let me see. I have all the notes here. We filed the H-1B in 2022, and then when we filed the perm in March of 2022, which is crazy, because basically at the same time, and we filed the and then by December of 2022, same year, we filed the I-140, and within 1 month, the case got approved, right? So everything was approved in 1 year: the H-1B, the perm, and the I-140. But the client still has to wait about 5 years. So now, as of now, it's already been about 2.5, 3 years. They still have to wait like 2, 3 more years before they can apply for a green card. This started like basically the end of 2021. It started in 2022 when we filed the H-1B and everything. They're years away from filing a green card to see if they deserve to be in the United States, to get lawful permanent resident status. If during this entire time, 5 years, 6 years, right, that they've been waiting, graduated Ivy League as an international student, and then going to work at these companies, helping this company grow from an 18 small tech company to a $50 million revenue company within just a few years. All this effort, if he gives birth to a kid under the executive order, that kid would not be a U.S. citizen because he's not a permanent resident yet, because he's not even close to even applying for permanent residency. He's still there years out. And this person's not even Indian. If this person's Indian, goodness gracious, I'm gonna wait another couple more years before they could even consider applying for a green card. So many Indian nationals, software developers, amazing tech workers who are in the United States, who've been here for almost 10 plus years on H-1B, their perm has been approved, their EB2, EB3 has been approved for years and years and years, meaning the government, the companies advertise on the market, nobody could fill the position, and they spent tens of thousands of dollars going through the legal process in filing fees, and now they're stuck with this company to work for them until they're waiting in line to be able to file for a green card. This is already insanely fast. From H-1B to advertisement to perm. Is that mine? Probably, right? Okay. That entire process 1 year. Right now, if we're starting in 2025, instead of 1 year, we predict maybe 2.5 to 3 years time instead of 1 year. So this case is a prime example of somebody who is a stellar international student that the U.S. desperately needs and wants. Small companies who really need talent like this, being able to recruit them early on, and then they are put in positions of authority and build out the company and double the revenue, double the staff, but it still takes them 5 years, 7 years to be able to get a green card. That is the legal pathway, and that was 2022. Now let's just add another 2, 3 years. So it's a 10-year process. However you define indenture servitude throughout history, back in Greek and Roman times, back in Egypt, wherever it is, anything over 7 years kind of feels like indenture servitude. In this case, under the H-1B, under our immigration process, that is what a normal way to get a green card through an employer looks like. And that is if the employer even wants you. Most people can't even get an employer to say, yes, I'm willing to go through that process for you. That's how crazy it is. And the reason why I'm talking about this story is because we just got his secretary's case approved this month. And it just reminded me about this case, right? So he's been at this company for what feels to me like been decades now. COVID kind of makes time double. And so it's like, what, you're still there, you're still working, and we just went through the exact same process, H-1B, all of this stuff, all the way through the I-140, got that approved. But now the secretary has to start waiting and potentially wait 5, 6 years. And so it is just mind-boggling, right? When I'm going through this application process with them, with the employer, the U.S. is full of contradictions. And maybe it's for the better, but it is full of contradictions. We have a tremendous supply of talent that wants to come here. We have tremendous effort by the U.S. government to prevent people from coming here. We create all these barriers to make it impossibly difficult for them to stay here and to work here and to get green cards. And then we make it extremely difficult and the cost of living is so high that even people who live here, who want to work here, cannot afford it and leave. And it's just this constant state of flux of expanding and contracting. But that is this country, for better or for worse. And whatever your opinion about the direction that this country is going, I just want to at least share with you what the legal process looks like for somebody who graduated STEM, who has a master's degree from Ivy League, who got an H-1B, got through the advertisement, got through the perm, got the I-140 approved, and still has to wait years and years and years before even being able to apply for a green card. But on the flip side, any international students who are in this space, thinking about it and choosing between different companies, my advice is always choose the company that you can work with, because this is a 5 to 10 year process. And at any time, they can pull back and say, nope, we don't want to do it anymore. So pick the company that you can most closely work with, that you can trust and they can trust you. If you are just a number in the grand scheme of things, they can easily just pause and say, nope, company policy, we're no longer filing any perms. And suddenly you're stuck. So if you have the luxury to choose, that is. And I know that's a big luxury to talk about in this job marketplace. With all that being said, the system is still working as hard as it may be, right? Because we just got the secretary's I-140 approved after so many years. And so if the company is on board, you are on board, you have value, the company has value, the U.S. Immigration Services is still granting these by the thousands every single day. And that's why there's such a backlog, because there are so many things to do and so many approvals to make. It's just obviously increasingly more difficult. And that's it for the success story today. I know there's a couple more questions. I'm here to answer any more before we see you guys next time.
Okay. How long does it take for a U visa to be issued? It's been 8 years since I applied.
We don't do U visas, but 8 to 15 years sounds about right.
Wow. Are applicants accepted differently from country to country, or even treated differently, such as applicants from Canada versus Mexico versus countries in Asia?
Of course they are. There's no doubt, shame, anything to hide behind. It is, like, what is it called? Profiling, right? When somebody suffers racial discrimination based on their color. In the United States, that is a taboo. But under immigration, that is totally legitimate. And they on good authority. Because if the country that you're from has a significantly high risk of violating immigration laws, for example, overstaying, right? If 9 out of 10 people that the consulate gives a tourist visa to comes and overstays and violates some crime, statistically, they're going to be harder and then treat you differently than if you come from a country that has no violations, right? So they do it on good authority. They cannot blame them. And that process is not subject to the Discrimination Act.
Is 30 days of waiting for a receipt notice after I-130 delivered to Elgin office normal?
It's a little long. We usually see it by 3 weeks, but if you waited 3 months, then it's abnormal. But 1 month, it's still potentially possible. But check with Emma, check the online system, and check with USCIS, and check the FedEx, right?
Would you recommend traveling with an expired green card and just a 751 letter?
What do you mean by a 751 letter? Like a 751 receipt notice with an extension saying that it's been filed and you can come back in? If so, if it's a short trip abroad, it's doable. We've definitely helped a lot of people come in. Again, our opinions are skewed because we work on some of the most difficult cases, right? So, but to answer your question, we've definitely helped people who've left the country with an expired green card and their 751 is just pending. But if you mean by 751 letter, meaning like you wrote a letter and say, hey, my marriage is real, I didn't file the case yet, that's probably not going to fly.
What is required for parents to apply for military parole in place? I'm enlisting soon.
I'm assuming you are trying to petition for your parents, right? And so this varies very differently between USCIS service centers, right? So for example, we're here in LA, the Santa Ana, the USCIS in Los Angeles, and the San Bernardino all adjudicate differently. My recommendation is try to find their specific requirements, one of which, the newest one that we've seen that's not published anywhere, is that you need a complete written and detailed statement about when you came in, and when you applied, etc. So it's like a detailed statement of your immigration history. It's not in the forms, but somehow they require it.
Okay, and our last question is: are you misrepresenting if you answer no on the 485 about immigration? If you worked with about immigration benefits, if you worked with a fake social security number. So yeah, they
Yeah.
worked with a fake social security,
And they got benefits.
and then they said no, they didn't on the 485.
That sounds like misrepresentation to me, and so it probably is. Now, if you just worked with a fake social security, that doesn't mean you actually got benefits, right? Because it means you paid social security by working. But if you collected unemployment insurance or PPP or all sorts of different things, then yes, you got benefits.
But if they didn't get any,
Benefits.
they just got paid regular, like at a job.
Yeah, but so you're answering a different question, right? It's like, did you work illegally? Then yes, you worked illegally. You used somebody else's social security number. But if the question is, did you receive any benefits, at least in the sense of benefits from the government? You didn't receive any benefits. You just worked with a social security and you paid into the social security system with your wage being deducted. It's a small difference. You're right, but just being particular.
Okay, so that is the end of our live. Thank you all for your questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. If people want to schedule a consultation, how can they do so?
On our website, you can directly find the slot, the time available for you. You can make a $250 payment, and one of the team members here would be able to meet with you. Most of it is on Zoom, and we record the whole thing, but definitely check it out. No pressure, right? Again, I try to do these live every Thursday. Feel free to just ask questions. We try to help as many people as we can. Even during those consultations, our goal is so that whatever question you have in the situation you're in, they could just provide that answer to you, and potentially you could just do it on your own, right? We don't have to do all the cases. A lot of times, if the issue is simple enough, we're good enough of a teacher that we've done this enough times that we could just answer a few questions and it will be all good. Okay?
Okay,
All right, thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.